Okay, so good morning, colleagues. You're very welcome to Culture and Engagement and Healthy UCD's webinar this morning. I'm Mark Simpson. This webinar is the final in our For Men series. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Orna O'Brien, who is a senior cardiology dietitian with the Irish Heart Foundation. We really appreciate your time this morning, Orna. So thank you very much. So Orna's going to work through her presentation and there will be time for questions at the end. So if you would like to ask a question, please use the Q&A function and we'll try and get to those when Orna has finished.
Hi everybody, as Mark said, my name is Orna and I'm the dietitian with the Irish Heart Foundation. And I'm delighted to be here today to talk to you about eating well for a healthy heart. And especially because there's so much misinformation out there. So my aim for this talk is really to clear some of that misinformation up and provide you with evidence-based strategies to protect your heart now and into the future. And we will have plenty of time for questions at the end, of course, which is always my favorite part. So if you do have any questions throughout this, just drop them into the Q&A and we'll answer them at the end. So just to give a little bit of context at the start, 1 in 4 men in Ireland die from heart disease or stroke. So we know we have a big problem with heart disease and stroke in Ireland. And yes, there are factors that we can't control. So our gender, because men get heart disease earlier than women, our age, our family history. So there are things that we can't change, but 80% of heart disease is preventable. 80% of heart disease and stroke is preventable. So that's a pretty big number. So there's a lot you can do, even if you've been dealt, a bad genetic hand. So a lot of this comes down to, checking your blood pressure, cholesterol, not smoking, not drinking alcohol to excess, enough physical activity during the day and a healthy diet. So all very simple things. It's not rocket science at the end of the day, but the how of it can be the challenging part. We all know what we should be doing, but it's the doing it that's the big challenge. So I want to start off not by talking about food, but talking about our heads and getting into that right headspace to think about making changes. So the best place to start if you're considering making a change in your lifestyle is starting with your why. So you need to have a strong reason for taking, for making a particular change, a powerful reason, so that when times get tough, that you can kind of rely on that and go back to it. And it helps you keep on track. So whatever that may be, it might be that we're still struggling through a hard pandemic and you just want to take a bit of time out to focus on yourself, whether it's that you've had a family or a friend health scare and that's kind of caused you to think about your own health. Whatever it is, getting to your why is kind of step 1 of this. And looking around at who's there to support you and to make those changes, whether it's a friend who will make these changes with you, a family member, or even a healthcare professional. And then also the big thing for me, I think, is understanding your habits, and particularly the habits that you're not happy with or you're struggling with. And on this point, I've kind of taken a screenshot here of a mapping of habits from Dr. Judd Brewer, who's a medical doctor who works a lot of behavior change. And really, to change habits, he says, you need to know how a habit works. And mapping out your habits actually really helps to identify, to understand how your brain works, so that you can learn to control it by changing your behaviors. So this is a very simple tool to kind of help increase your awareness of those habits and what's causing you to have a particular habit that's bugging you. So the first part is the trigger. So this is what starts the habit. So it could be emotional, sensational. So feeling stressed out after a long day, restless, really hungry. And it could be a situation. So you see a packet of crisps on the counter and there's no healthy food in the house that you fancy right now. So whatever it is, there's always a trigger that starts it off. Then the behavior is whatever habit you happen to be struggling with. So in this case, it might be eating a bag of chips or cookies. And then the result is how that makes you feel. So, whether that's in the moment, so feeling less hungry, getting a sugar or salt hit off that food, but then, over time that is mixed with feeling less in control, maybe contributing to weight gain or, tooth decay, or, all those other extra things that we kind of niggle back of our mind. So even the process of becoming more aware of your habits and just mapping them out will help to give your brain the new information about how rewarding or how unrewarding a behavior is, because we all think, eat a bag of crisps, feel good. But if you reassess that and you have other results from that habit that, you feel out of control, you can't stop, that's making you feel guilty, shamed, all of that, mapping out this habits and just bringing awareness to it can give your brain the new information that it needs to make that change and to build a new kind of a different reward or a different behavior instead. There's a bit more information about that on his website, which I've put at the bottom of the screen there, if you do want to have a go at mapping out a few of your behaviors. But onto the food side of things now. How do we build heart healthy foundations? So really it comes down to more fruit or veg, more whole grains, more heart healthy fats, less foods that are high in sugar or fat, less salt, limiting alcohol, and more movement as well. So I'm not going to get into alcohol or smoking as much today because I'm a dietitian, obviously, so I'm a bit biased and passionate for the food side of things. But if just to take a look at one of these foundations, everyone is very different. We all lead different lifestyles. So you might already be ticking the box with a lot of these. So focus on maybe one of these blocks that you think you need to address a little further, or that you could really benefit from in your lifestyle, because it can be overwhelming to try and change so many things at once. So just focus on one. And if that particular thing is that you feel you're not getting enough fruit and veg in the day, you're not reaching your 5 to 7 portions of fruit and veg, well then you're absolutely not alone, because 3 out of 4 of us in Ireland do not reach our 5 a day. So that's a pretty awful statistic. So, but even if you're not meeting your 5 to 7 a day, for every single portion of fruit or vegetables that you eat throughout the day, you reduce your risk of heart disease and stroke by 30%. So they're so powerful. So the number one thing I can tell you to protect your heart is more fruit and veg. And the reasons these are so powerful is that they're the perfect kind of packaged food of high in vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, and all these other nutrient compounds that we need for health, and really high in fiber. So really the message here, more. If you feel like you need to boost your fiber intake or eat more whole grains, so again, you're not alone. I think 8 out of 10 of us in Ireland do not reach our fiber requirement. So we're living in Ireland in a very fiber deficient society. And these foods are so important because they're filling, and they feed our good gut bacteria, they reduce our cholesterol, they reduce your risk of heart disease, of stroke, of bowel cancer, of diabetes and obesity. And also it's one of the simplest changes that you can make as well. So for example, if you're having cornflakes or Rice Krispies for breakfast, can you switch over to Weetabix, porridge, and can you try whole grain bread instead of white bread? Can you try, brown pasta one of the nights instead of white pasta, and just see how you find that? Because a lot of the brown pastas, brown rices, they make them a lot better than they used to. So they actually do cook quicker. So very simple change to make, but can have a huge impact on your heart health. When it comes to heart healthy fats, so really we talk about two different types of fats, your bad fats or your saturated fats, and these mainly come from animal sources like butter, processed or fatty meats, snack foods like cookies, fried foods, full fat dairy products, and also some tropical oils like coconut oil. So what we want to do is minimize our intake of these bad fats and maximize and kind of switch some of those for the good fats. So we're talking about oily fish like salmon, mackerel, herring, trout, pilchards, olive oil, rapeseed oil, any kind of non-tropical vegetable oil. And then nuts, seeds, and also avocados. So practical examples of how this might work is for fatty or processed meats, choosing a smaller portion of lean meat, maybe trimming the fat off or removing the skin off poultry, and replacing some of the meat in a dish with more beans and lentils, great source of fiber and low in fat, or switching out some of the meat you have every week for oily fish or a vegetarian night. If it's full fat dairy, can you try low fat milk, yogurt, or cheese? And also fortified soya alternatives are great, or any other type of plant alternative as well. They're automatically going to be much lower in them is from a plant source, so it's much healthier. When it comes to fats and oils, so trying to use a vegetable oil based spread, like an olive oil based spread or a sunflower oil based spread over regular butter. Or if you're not a big fan of those, from a processed point of view, try some kind of whole food options like avocado or nut butter of your choice. Olive oil or rapeseed oil instead of coconut oil, butter, lard. And then also looking at the way you're cooking food. So are you frying most of the time? Could you dry fry on a high heat? Could you use a little bit of stock or water instead of oil? Could you poach, bake? Just looking at kind of a few different fat-free cooking methods as well. And then that are high in fat and sugar, all the kind of treat foods really. This very much links in with what we were talking about earlier in the talk about identifying that trigger and becoming aware of those habits and figuring out what that food is giving you. And then also setting up your environment around you so that the healthier choice is the easier choice, so that you stocked up on nourishing snacks maybe for when you are just feeling really peckish and hungry. You kind of gatekeep, so you're keeping the treats out of the house. Or let's say if you tend to buy something on the way home in the car, could you call a friend on speakerphone and kind of distract yourself during that time, and not have a food-based treat. When it comes to salt, if this was the area that you'd like to focus on, salt raises our blood pressure. So by raising our blood pressure, it's forcing the blood in our body to pump around at a faster rate, and that increases it increases our heart disease, our risk of heart disease and stroke, and it also damages the lining of our blood vessels. So it makes the blood vessel lining a little bit more tacky, so that cholesterol is more likely to build up on the lining. And even though we actually only need about 5 grams of salt every day, but most of us eat 10 to 12 grams of salt in the day, so more than double. But it's not really what we're adding in at the table. About 80% of the salt that we eat is already in the food. So really in Western society, the big culprits are processed foods. So things like cured meat, battered fish, packet soups, or sauces, ready meals, stock cubes, salty sauces like soy sauce, ketchup, salty snacks like salted popcorn, crisps. So the number one thing that we can do to reduce our salt intake is just to get back to basics a little bit, to that unprocessed, kind of old-fashioned way of eating, really, more home-cooked meals. So if you're cooking food from scratch, you're automatically going to have less salt in your diet. Try to season without salt, so upping the garlic, the onions, the spices, the herbs, maybe using some citrus juice or lime zest in your cooking to up the flavors. If you're choosing meat or fish, and trying to go for real unprocessed lean meat or fish, trying to keep the salt cellar off the table as well, and also just having a bit of patience, because our taste buds adjust to salt over time. So if you have quite a salty diet, it will take about 4 or 6 weeks for your taste buds to adjust. So just be mindful of that, but they do adjust, and we know that there's a direct relationship between cutting down your salt and reducing your blood pressure. And then staying active is obviously a very important part of minding your heart and our weight, but also our mental health. And I think I know I'm sure I speak for more than myself here when I say that we all need a bit of extra mental health hygiene at the moment to kind of get us through the last couple of months or years now at this stage. We should be having 30 minutes of moderate intensity physical activity at least 5 days a week. So that means, by moderate intensity, I mean that you feel a little bit warmer, the heart rate is up, and your breathing increases. So it doesn't need to be an actual sport. You don't need to be sporty to be fit. It could just be adding in more walks to your day, just breaking up your sitting time, getting the blood moving, particularly if you are working from home as well. Those long periods of sitting can be really damaging to our heart health. But whatever way you choose to get fit, if you try to keep it fun and social and outdoors if you can manage the cold at this time of year, and something that's integrated well into your lifestyle, whether it's done with a friend, it's done through your commute or your schedule, it does help you to kind of build a healthy routine. And then when it comes to alcohol, obviously alcohol has a negative effect on your heart health. In Ireland, we have obviously a huge problem with alcohol excess, and men shouldn't be drinking more than 17 units in the week, or standard drinks in the week. So, for example, a pint is 2 standard drinks. A real glass of wine, not the tiny little ones that they normally mention, a real glass of wine is about 2.5 drinks, or it's 1 standard measure of pub spirits. And just to put it into context, 1 bottle of wine is 7 standard drinks. So anything over 6 standard drinks is considered a binge and will damage your heart and liver organs. And so we want to try and keep our drinking below that 17 units for men. It's 11 units for women. And we also want to make sure that we're spreading it out throughout the week. If you think that you might have an issue with alcohol, or you're worried about your alcohol intake, there's a great website, Ask About Alcohol. It's the HSE website, where you can do a self-assessment quiz on it to tell you a little bit more about your drinking habits. And then almost lastly, I just wanted to mention a word about weight, because often when people see a dietitian coming to talk to them, they think she's just going to, you can't have this, you can't have that, and that it's all very focused on weight. And that is very much not the case when it comes to your heart health. In fact, the new European Society of Cardiology guidelines show that it would take you 10 kilos of weight loss to reduce your cholesterol significantly, but you can actually make those changes just by changing the quality of what you're eating. So rather than focusing on weight, you're much better off looking at what you're putting into your body. And I think we also live in a society that values weight and, you know, skinniness at any cost, or having the perfect built lean body. And we can be incredibly cruel to ourselves. But you're not defined by, you know, your number on a scales. And I just would love this opportunity to drive home that message that, you know, we need to be making sure we're moving the dial away from that perspective to one of nourishment, to one where we're making sure that we're giving our bodies and our hearts the things that it needs to keep going and protect itself long term. And that is back to basics: more fruit, more veg, more whole grains, more movement. So just to recap briefly, the best things that you can do for your heart health are to limit alcohol, stop smoking, manage any underlying conditions that you have, like diabetes or chronic kidney disease. But more fruit, vegetables, whole grains, and plant proteins is a great way to start. Getting in those heart healthy fat swaps, less salt and processed foods, and more movement. How you can reboot your life. So if you are interested in using some of these resources from the campaign, you can Google our foundation Reboot, and on the page you can take a quiz to see how you fare up food-wise, lifestyle-wise. There's also loads of resources up there for kickstarting your healthy eating from the food side of things, sitting less and moving more and getting active. And there's also a booklet that you can download as well, so you can sign up to the campaign there. And we also have lots of different healthy eating booklets, so healthy cholesterol, blood pressure, healthy eating, and being active booklets available on our website, or else you can call us up and order them. And we have little food shopping cards showing you how to read food labeling. And as well as that, if there's a question, I know we're about to answer a few questions now, but if there is a question that you don't want to ask in a public forum, and you'd like to speak directly to one of our nurses, the phone number there is on the screen: 01668 5001.